Right, welcome back. We're still checking out proceedings from Ondo State, covering the Ondo State election. In case you just joined us at the Arise News channel, what we know now is the fact that 12 local government areas have been declared. The APC is leading in 9 of those local government. INEC says they're going to start their counting and collation again by 9 o'clock. But at the look of my time, it's 9:17. We're still waiting on INEC to fill us in with information on the remaining 6 local government areas in Ondo State. We've got analysts, we've got the Deputy Managing Director, KOMOLAFE. We also have Public Affairs Analyst Victor OKAI here with us. Also, we've got publisher of Complete News, Editor OLUTOKUN. We also have Sunday ADEJOH in Abuja. Victor, let me come to you. It's my pleasure talking to you this morning. I mean, great analysis you had yesterday. I watched you all through. Like the sentiments put forward here that Mr. KOMOLAFE and I were discussing is the fact that the issues don't dominate political discourse any longer. And I'll give you an instance. We're talking before we got on the air. We're talking about the Ajashin Adomobori elections in the Second Republic. And what Mr. KOMOLAFE was saying was the fact that it wasn't because of geopolitical sentiments. It was because a lot of people were telling him then that once you go out and vote on Ajashin that will give your children education, that Ajashin didn't give anybody money. But now our politics has become, where are you from? What's your take on
that? Just looking at the English word issues already negates the question, if you permit my putting it that way. Because the truth is, what is the issue at any point in time? For some people, it is the fact that they've not had, power has not come to their side. For them, that is a burning issue at that point in time. For some, it may just be stomach infrastructure. So maybe we want to talk about ideologies rather than issues, I don't know. I'm trying to look for the right word to use. I'm not even sure that that is right. But at every point in time, maybe because of the nature of nascent democracy and all that, the things that matter to people in other climes do not necessarily matter to us. But that is also understandable. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'll find that at the very bottom is survival. And so if a man is at the survival level, that for him is a burning issue. It is after you have been well fed, if you are well fed, the next thing you are thinking about is security, you are thinking about housing and all of that. If you've gotten all of that, then you can begin to talk about, for instance, I laugh when some people talk about building flyovers and all that. It's a man that has a car that flyovers will make sense to. For farmers, in the remote areas, they need roads that will lead straight into the farms and all of that. But politicians are also very clever, perhaps cleverer than many of us. At every point in time, they are listening, like every good businessman. They are listening to what their constituents want. Let me use street language. Okay, maybe not. But they are listening to what the customer wants, Not necessarily, I don't know about what he needs, but at every point in time, what is the customer saying? So if the man is complaining about hunger, at that point, that is the only thing that matters to them. It may not sound right, but I'm hoping that we'll grow out of it. And indeed we are. You would have seen it happen in Edo State. They're not necessarily contented, but it got to a point where what mattered to them was not, they gave them money. They took the money, they still voted their conscience, which means there was a higher calling. There was something that mattered more. The issue that was more burning to them at that point was more than money. So in Ondo, what are some of the issues? If you look at some of the actors, the political gladiators, yesterday I was talking about Kekemike and Olushola, for instance. The people in the South, they have had the least not necessarily short, but the least opportunity of being governor. And for them, they feel that power must come to their side next. The North has had the most. the Central second. And so they feel that in supporting Akeredolu, it's like what is happening even in Nigeria, in politics at the national level. In supporting Akeredolu, they stand a better chance of getting to power. If it goes any other way, then they will have to wait for another 8 years. There's a potential of waiting for 8 years. So they have that at the back of their mind. And so that, for instance, is a major issue. Akeredolu also was also very smart to have taken time to do the reconciliations that he did. He probably has good advisors and has seen what has happened within the party itself, where disagreements have brought down a lot of political... You saw what happened in Edo, for instance. Peace would have settled the issue in Edo, and so many other states like that. We saw issues like that in Zamfara. And so he was quick to go. If it didn't matter... I mean, all politicians who at times you may not know, you see them quarreling publicly. In the secret, they can dobale. And for our international listeners, it just means you can prostrate on your belly just to get what you want. And then when you come out in the open, you stand up like a gentleman. No one would have known what happened behind closed doors. But he did what he needed to do just to make sure that he cleared the path for his way back to Government House. So in response to what you have just said, issue is what matters. For politicians, issue is what matters to the voter at every particular point in time. The politician listens and he speaks to those points, and that is all that matters.
Thank you, Mr. OKAI, for sharing your views with us with regards to this. Let me now bring in Dr. Sunday ADEJOH, who's joining us from our Abuja studios, to get your views. One, of course, with regards to what Mr. OKAI has just said, and notably he mentioned that if we look at some of the issues, people in the South are more likely to vote for Governor Akeredolu, in his opinion, simply because that means that they will have to wait another 4 years rather than 8 years if we're looking at the geopolitics of the state. He also pointed out that the reconciliation process that Governor Akeredolu went into, of course, is something that was of help. Would you agree with these? Would you agree with his analysis?
Well, absolutely, I agree with his analysis, and that is because when you take a critical look at the political permutation and the political behavior of politicians and Nigerians in general, you will see that what is going on in Ondo State is a reflection of the generality of the political culture of Nigerians. And this political culture is a product of the kind of political socialization that we've had. You know, the politicians are strategic in nature. And so we are in 2020, but people are already projecting, for 2023. And so what we are seeing in Ondo State is a strategic political calculation for people within the Ondo South to ensure that, of course, this whole thing gets to them, and a son or a daughter within the Ondo South, of course, becomes, the governor of Ondo State in 2023. But be that as it may, one of the analysts was talking about issue-based politics. It's unfortunate that we are still in the 21st century being primordial in our political behavior. People no longer emphasize capacity. People no longer emphasize meritocracy. All we are doing is to pick up primordial sentiments and indices of primordial sentiments to determine and decide who gets what, when and how, and who becomes what, and of course, the authoritative allocation of value. And this explains why after 21 years of democratic rule, after 21 years of the Fourth Republic, we have not been able to see any tangible, dividend of democracy, because emphasis is not on capacity. Emphasis is based on primordial sentiment. And until we begin to change these things, yes, if you get a governor from Ondo South, what is the yardstick? What is the confidence that you have that this person is going to transform Ondo South? Why don't we have a governor who has the generality of the people at heart, rather than bringing up, this rotational policy that is primordial and prebendal in nature? This will not help us at all as a people. It will not even help the Ondo State as a state. We must begin to emphasize merit over primordial sentiment. It has never worked and it will not work.
Right. I'll come to you, Mr. ENITAN. Is it the case that a lot of people are thinking, oh, we ought to be politically mature just overnight in Nigeria, you know, owing to the fact that anyway, we've been having elections in this country for close to 100 years since the colonial times, but return to democracy has just been 20 years and counting now, or just close to 20 years or 20 years. Is it that we think we should have matured so quickly? Should that be the case? Are we not being fair to ourselves about this sentiment? Because we are so quick to compare our democracy with America. Oh, yeah. But let's not forget, at some point in America's own history, they had this primordial sentiment. You know, for you to become the president of America, it's either you're from the Confederate States or the northern part of America. There was this dichotomy between the South and the North that finally broke out in the fight for slaves into a civil war.
Well, if you look at what you just said now, and if you look at the trajectory of our democratic experience, looking at 1999 to date, I think we are still nascent in a sense of it, and it's something that we are going to grow into over time. If you are talking about political situation or maturity, it actually takes time, and I want to commend our people. Our people have really comported themselves. They have really conducted themselves in such a way, that is even baffling, to a lot of analysts. Because if you look at the level of poverty we have in the land, you can still see some modicum of conscience, in the way people exercise their political rights, So it shows to you that we are actually making a lot of progress. For instance, people have been talking about stomach infrastructure and inducement and what have you. So let's just face it. We have to be very frank with ourselves. A man who has not eaten cannot reason properly. So in a situation where you see some of our people, despite the level of their poverty, they are still able to actually vote their conscience after collecting money. It also speaks to the level of political awareness and socialization and maturity, that people have, in exercising, their political rights. So going forward, I think we need a stakeholder approach into educating our people, into enlightening them, concerning their rights. But if you look at the whole thing, now we are talking about, having block votes or votes swinging, based on where a governor is coming from, is because most of our developmental approach has not been even. We don't do it holistically. If you go to Owo today, where the incumbent governor is from, you see a lot of development, there, in terms of roads, in terms of infrastructure. But even under the same Ondo North Senatorial District, if you move from Oba to Akungba down to Ikare, though he did one or two things in Ikare, from Arigidi to Okiagbe, to Ikaram, Ibaram, to Oyi. No, I'm from Akoko, I'm from Ondo State, for instance, I'm from Okiagbe. If you want to, the roads in those houses are quite bad. To the extent that the governor, when he went to campaign in Okiagbe, he couldn't meet the traditional ruler there. He has to go and meet them, in their respective places and all that. They have a particular place where he meet them because of the deplorable state of the road. So what we should be talking, after about 21 years of this democratic experiment, is not for us to be concerned, about where a candidate comes from. It's for us to be concerned about delivering service and delivering the dividend of democracy to people, regardless of your location. Look at what is happening in the South. The Laje, the Igbokoda, the Ondo, and the rest. In terms of development, they are still complaining about the issue of light. Power has been a major problem in that houses. And this is the hazard, this is the oil producing area in Ondo State, where Ondo is getting its own, little derivation as a result of being an oil producing state. So what we need going forward, we should be out of all this, nauseating narrative of, yes, let a governor come from our place so that we can have development. We need, political leaders who are going to be patriotic to people, regardless of where, they come from. So essentially, for us to, begin to have that political maturity we are looking at, it will be premised on the socio-economic condition of an average Nigerian. So if you have an average, for instance, if I have enough with me, let's say on the day of election, I have close to 100,000 naira, 150,000 naira in my account, and you are coming to me to induce me with, 5,000 naira. It's even annoying that in some cases they will give them things like slippers and ludo. And we saw it. They will package gari and epa and bread, and put their label and say. So it's actually demeaning. It is demeaning. It nullifies the dignity of man. The way our politicians actually treat our people. And I want to believe that people have started applying their common sense too. Because if someone gives you 5,000 naira, 7,000 naira, to induce you to change you at the pools, so you are going to stay with the person for the next 4 years. So there is no point complaining if such person, drops the ball in terms of performance, because you have already mortgaged, your future. So going forward, I think the media, the civil society group, and the elites, the Nigerian elite, they have a duty, to sensitize and educate our people concerning how powerful their votes, their votes are. So that is exactly the way forward, in my own humble opinion.
Mr. OLUTOKUN, many thanks for sharing your views as well. I'm going to bring it back into the studio now to Mr. KOMOLAFE to get your opinion on everything that we've heard. Mr. OLUTOKUN described what we're seeing as a nauseating narrative. We've also heard that a lot of the geopolitics is primordial. We heard that from our guest in Abuja. What is your take on their analysis?
Thank you. But permit me to take off from the remark of Rufai. I think he was suggesting that for us, maybe we are a bit impatient with our people, that it should take time. I'm trying to contest that even by the standard of our own history, that if we learn from our history, let us not even go to America, let's not go to Britain, let us stay here in Nigeria. That when I say that the Malay is that of political underdevelopment, that it's not just that we are not growing, but we are even, degenerating. Yeah. Let me just give 2 instances. This same Ondo State, I said, for people who were voting age in 1979, in 1983, that all this new culture is very strange, to that particular state. Now, people voted that time, believing that Awolowo's party, UPN, that if you voted UPN, you guarantee that your children will have quality public education. You will have access to free health. And this was no fluke, it was real. And that was what obtained in the other UPN states. Because I personally, in my life, I was a beneficiary at the very crucial. I could have died, but for the free health service, that existed in Lagos State, when Jakonde was a governor. So when I discussed this, at times I try to get passionate, because it is not theory, it is something that was real. So there were issues. So when people in Ondo State in 1979, in 1983 voted UPN, it was not based on this question, it was based on there were issues, and these issues were contested with the other parties, especially the MPN, which was the major. What we call the opposition then in Ondo State. Now, 2, this question of just reducing politics into just geopolitical calculus, which means at times, when you overstretch it, it becomes a cynical game. to be that. So just a question of whether it should be in the north, it should be from the south. It was not so. People refer to the violence of 1983. Don't forget that that battle was really fought in the Ekiti part of the state then, which is the present Ekiti state. And Omobori was from Ijero Ekiti. Omobori was an Ekiti man, contesting against Ajasin from Owo. But the Ekiti, based on principle, because they could see the substance, of the derivatives, governance in Ajasin, stood behind Ajasin to fight their own son, Omobori, houses were burned. There were riots in Ekiti because, based on principle, because they as far as they were concerned, they pitched their tent against the MPN, that fielded Omobori, who up to the time of the election was the deputy to Ajasin. So you then discover that as at that time, in this question of geopolitical, where you came from did not matter. There were some issues. If you stretch further, in 1979, by the time Balarabe Musa was elected governor of Kaduna, the old Kaduna state, and Abubakar Rimi was elected the governor of the old Kano state, if it was not because of issues, that because the PRP, which they represented, came up with a radical populist, agenda, whether you like it, that was sort of ideological direction. This gentleman who resigned from paid jobs. Abubakar Rimi was, before he joined politics, he was the executive secretary of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs here in Lagos. He was a civil servant. But Balarabe Musa was an accountant in a private company. So they were not billionaires, they didn't have money, but all they could say was that, that heritage, drawing up from, the heritage of NEPO, which they now, infused into the PRP politics, and they were able to sell to the Talakawas in Kano and Kaduna that they will execute, popular program, and which indeed they did. For instance, on the day of inauguration, the inauguration in 1979, both Balarabe Musa and Rimi abolished what we call Jangali, cattle tax, which had been seen as a symbol of oppression, of the peasants. They were able to capture the imagination of the peasantry, as it were. Rimi executed a literacy program, education program in Kano, which UNESCO acknowledged. That is more than 40 years ago. Indeed, in this same country, based on issues. So if you then saw that, people in Kano, in Kaduna, were just it's PRP that, even though MPN controlled the federal government, but those two cosmopolitan centers in the north were under the whole of PRP, which was just another party. Didn't have any billionaire in PRP. But the basis of galvanizing support was based, on issues. And that happened in this country. In fact, I remember way back in 1983, a prominent journalist, one Mr. Tunde Obadina, was making a review of the party manifestos, towards the election in 1983, was writing them for the Concord. He made a remark with them, which has stuck into my memory. Said, by his own evaluation, because he was a journalist who had practiced in Britain, he was familiar with the British politics, that the consciousness of the electorate of Kaduna and Kano as at 1983 was higher than that of the British electorate by his estimation, because people were making choices based on the issues, not sentiments, and this happened in this same country. So if 40 years later, like we started off this analysis, I wasn't comfortable. All we can be talking about is Akeredolu is from the north part of Ondo State, Ajayi is from the south part, Yitayo is from the What does that mean to the collapse of public education in Ondo State?
Okay, that brings me to ask you a question. Can you also, by extension, and this goes for the other analysts, to tell me what was the GDP per capita of an average Nigerian, or the state of poverty of an average Nigerian in 1979 and 83, where we talk about this glowing days? Because obviously when we now talk about the ADEJOH syndrome, which it means for our international audience, that just means invariably vote and you get money for voting to cook soup. That's what it means. Yeah. So if we have that syndrome, what caused it? The 79 you talked about, what's the GDP per capita of Nigeria?
I've got it up for you, $874 US dollars.
For an average Nigerian, and the dollar, the naira was 1 to 1.
Yep.
Then. So when even the naira was even more than the dollar then.
Yeah.
And the 83 you are talking about, the naira was even more than the dollar 1 to 1 because I know that the valuation of the naira started in 1986, 26th of January 1986.
Yeah.
So were these people not financially viable then? We didn't have 100 million people living in poverty then. That's going to be a big argument. A lot of people are going to... Let me start from Mr. Victor OKAI on that. Then we also take it to Dr. ADEJOH in Abuja as regards that. I mean, you can react to that, Mr. Victor OKAI.
So I'm just going to lay down a few, what I might call... I'll just lay down a few backgrounds that have brought us to where we are here today. Just 2 days ago, I saw a picture of when Peugeot automobile plant was launched in Nigeria, I think 1975 or so by General Yakubu Gowon. The plant was commissioned at the cost of 8-point-something million naira. 8-point-something million naira will not buy one Peugeot today. Okay? I will just put that aside and then talk about the origin of corruption in Nigeria today, which was during Murtala's time when he indiscriminately terminated the appointments of so many civil servants. There used to be job security in Nigeria. When Murtala came, he destroyed every sense of job security, and then civil servants now resorted to self-help, because they were no longer sure that they, when they get employed, they will go to full tenure, be retired normally, and enjoy their pension. So people started resorting to self-help. Now this mentality, because of course the politicians who came in the Second Republic, many of them were civil servants, retired, some serving who retired in order to take part in politics. They entered with this same mentality. And so corruption became entrenched. It was not like corruption was not a part of our system before, even in the First Republic, but people stole with, even when they stole with a lot of fear, and there were repercussions. But it became brazen in the Second Republic. And so you find a situation where people resorted first to self-help, first of all. And then the people who came from the First Republic still had the traditions of the First Republic. The Awolowos, the Zigs, the Aminu Kanos, and the rest. And that's why they could talk about things like education. They could talk about housing. You saw what Jakonde did in Lagos. And so many of them, they came with very good, laudable programs, because these were the remnants from the First Republic. They carried that tradition into the Second Republic. But then again, those who came in and joined them in the Second Republic, a lot of corruption started at that point. And then ethnic politics became very, very strong as well. And so we found a situation where even the army did not help matters at all by the way, they conducted affairs of government. So people now decide, you find a situation where divide and rule started. If people cannot get into power, they start resorting into things like tribalism, they don't want our people to get into power. Where that doesn't work, they bring in religious sentiments. It's the Christians or the Muslims, they are dominating. And all of that just started eroding every value that we had. Now, come the Third Republic, or the Fourth, where I would say we are now, what you find is a situation now where politicians, people no longer trust them, because they make promises that they don't keep. They tell you they will give you free education. They get in there, they forget their promises. And so Nigerians now started learning not to trust politicians anymore, which is the reason why you will find a voter, when you say to them, take this 10,000 and vote for me, they know, in their heart of hearts, they believe that that is the only thing they can get. That what you grab now is the only thing you can ever get. You cannot trust the average politician anymore. Unfortunately, the psyche of the average voter has been so bastardized. Trust for the average politician has been lost, because many of them are corrupt, not trustworthy, they lack integrity. I'm not saying everybody, there are still many gentlemen in politics, but in the main, so many, you cannot take their word to the bank. And so everything, just collapsed like that. And so value reorientation, I think, is the biggest thing that we need in this country. And we need to trust our government again, because they don't keep their words. And so that is where we lost everything, which is why today, when you talk about principles, you're talking about free education. When you tell the average voter, they tell you, oh, me, the one I can get now is the one I know. I don't trust you. Your children are abroad. You are talking to me about free education. How can I trust you? Free medical care. When you have earache, headache, you go abroad. How can I trust you? They go to the medical facilities. Everything is dilapidated. So there's a lack of trust between the average Nigerian. I mean, it goes beyond the issue of GDP in this case. It's a matter of trust. The average Nigerian does not trust the average politician in government anymore because they hardly keep their promises. So I think that is where our problems started. I want to give the other analysts time to build upon that and expand on it.
That's a great place to build on. I thank you so much, for also, setting the tone for us. Dr. Sunday ADEJOH in Abuja, I'm going to come to you. Dr. Sunday ADEJOH, there was a time in this country where we didn't care if it was a Muslim ticket. In fact, MQ Abiola and Wagana Kingibe were Muslim tickets, but we didn't care. Christians rallied round. Everybody rallied round. Then what happened?
Well, I think that was the best time for me that we got things right in this country, where religion and other primordial sentiments was not an issue as far as deciding who becomes governor, who becomes president, because at that point, we were more interested in capacity. These political parties had clear-cut manifestos, and Nigerians knew what they were capable of doing if eventually, they capture political power. But after, the 1993 election, things became worse. What we are seeing in Nigeria is a complete paradigm shift, an antithetical ideology from what was in the First Republic, in the Second Republic, and even in the Third Republic, where the political class have become more self-centered. The political class have become more desperate to the point that they are ready to use any strategy to ensure that they capture power. And that's why we are where we are today. The last analyst said something about the political class. If they try ethnicity, if it doesn't work, they use religion. If it doesn't work, they look for several other means, to ensure that they achieve political power. And that explains why, this country has become more polarized than we were. As at 1993, it tells you the degree of uniformity, the degree of unity and national integration, as far as Nigeria is concerned. That is why a Christian will be ready to vote for a Muslim ticket, because as far as Nigerians were concerned then, Babagana Kingibe and his mate had the capacity to take Nigeria to the promised land. But what do we have today? Ethnicity and religion is used at various levels, at the federal level, at the state level, even at the senatorial district. You see manifestation, of all these indicators. But like we were saying a while ago, the electorate have lost trust, in the political class. They say they will do something. They come up with beautiful manifestos. 4 years down the line, you have nothing to show for all these things. And so why wouldn't people lose trust from a country where the naira was at a point weighing more than even the dollar, to a country where a naira, the exchange rate, is nothing to write home about? It tells you the level of degeneration that this country, is experiencing. And that is a manifestation of the lack of consistency and plan within the leadership spectrum of this country. If the political class had continued from what the politicians were doing in the First Republic and in the Second Republic, Nigeria wouldn't be where we are today. Nigeria is now the headquarters of poverty in the world. Nigeria is now one of the most unsafe countries in the world. Nigeria has one of the most deadliest terrorist organizations in the world. How comes we are where we are today? Nigeria used to be a very peaceful country. Today, you can hardly travel on our highways because you are not guaranteed of your security. All this goes back to the quality of leadership that we have, and the question of whether or not the political class really have the interests of Nigerians at heart. But I tell you, it is obvious that the political class are more interested, in their personal aggrandizement than in the general will of the populace, and that is why the country is depreciating by the day. And this does not only apply, to government at the center, it applies to government across every, the 774 local government of Nigeria. We have lost trust of the people, and trust is not something you can buy. You must earn it. And the only way we can earn trust, or the political class can earn the trust of the electorate, is to begin to translate governance into service delivery. It's to begin to put in place every dividends of democracy. I used to tell people, if I am governor for 4 years, I may not necessarily need to campaign if I want to become governor for another term, because my work would speak for me. But today you have people where after 4 years, you barely, have something to show. And developmental projects have become also sentimental. People want to do things for regions, for senatorial districts, from the local government where they come from. And so how do you earn the general trust of the people? There's a need for government to begin to plan. And we need to plan and have plans that are sustainable. And we must be deliberate. And people we bring into our cabinet must also be people who have the intellectual capacity to deliver. Not a situation where a lot of our commissioners, a lot of our ministers, a lot of heads of parastatals are people who are given political compensation because of the role they play in the emergence of a particular governor or a particular president. And that is why we are not getting things right. We must go back to the drawing board, we must plan, and we must be ready to stick to the plans. And our political class must begin to develop the interest of the nation. We must begin to have and understand that government and governance is a social contract. And so when the people come and they vote for you, and you are promised you are going to do X, Y, Z, what happens when the onus is now on you? We get the contrary. And that is why we are degenerating. That is why we have high rate of insecurity in the country. That's why we have high rate of unemployment. From a country where as soon as you graduate, you already have a job waiting for you and a car, to a country where when you graduate, you have to buy jobs. It will shock you that there are jobs in Nigeria worth 4 million. Government establishment. How comes we are degenerating by the day? And sometimes I'm not comfortable when we begin to compare, for instance, our democracy, our political maturity with that of the US and all of that, how long it took them. Those years, they are indices for comparison, but sometimes we must understand that. If it took my father 50 years to buy a car, and I'm a son of my father in the 21st century, it shouldn't take me 50 years to buy a car. I should do things better than my father did. We have every opportunity, to learn from the past, to learn from history of other countries, and begin to do things differently. For goodness sake, China is just barely 11 years older than Nigeria. Using every indices of development, using every human development index, can we compare ourselves with China? China is where they are today simply because of leadership. We are where we are today simply because we have also not got issues of leadership correctly. We have not had leaders who are more interested in the welfare and well-being of Nigerians, but leaders who are more interested, in their own personal aggrandizement. And that is why, of course, you have a rate of instability where people want to get power by all means and not waiting for the people, to vote.
At least a lot of people argue with you that we have a democracy in Nigeria, but China doesn't have a democracy. We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back with the analysts and talk some more. But we are still waiting on INEC to start the coalition again. We're waiting on those 6 local government areas. We'll be right back.